one, go.
Hello viewers, welcome to part 14 of the Smart Mobility Revolution. My name's Kevin Borras, joined as ever by Bob McQueen, one of 3 co-authors of a new body of knowledge called the Smart Mobility Revolution. We've been talking over the last 14 or 13 parts of all the constituent elements of what is smart city, what is a smart mobility revolution, what are the modes available. We've looked at challenges and opportunities. We've looked at pretty much everything. Episode 14 now, we are talking about policy and strategy. Without policy and without a strategic vision to implement that policy, none of this happens. So how in this body of knowledge, it's a book and it's a video and it's audio, educational content, lots of other stuff going on with this project. But how do you cover policy and strategy in what is essentially a book?
Well, first of all, if you're getting it right, your policies should support your strategy. First of all, you should have a good idea about what it is you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it, and then policies should match. Now, you know, years ago when I wasn't as sage as I am now, I would have said, who cares about policy? You know, it just gets in the way, it stifles innovation, stops things from happening, and just generally is a waste of space. However, I've seen so many effects of deregulation that we know that policy is required. For example, years ago in Scotland, in Glasgow, they decided to deregulate the bus service. And we ended up with bus jams, with several companies all vying for the same route. There needed to be some kind of structure, some kind of overall view. While private sector is wonderful because they're agile, they've got money, they're focused, they can move forward very quickly, sometimes you can't trust them to do things for the public good. There needs to be policy overlaid into that. Now, part of the challenge is that policy very often lags behind innovation. Case in point, micromobility. You know, micromobility has appeared in all the big cities in the US, a lot of European cities, and policy has been a little slow to catch up. For example, what speed are you allowed to travel at in what area? What rules govern where you should leave the vehicle? You know, do you leave it somewhere where it gets in the way and trips somebody up? What data should you provide as a micromobility provider to the public agencies?
Yeah.
You know, for example, Uber, who are not micromobility, but they apparently are sometimes reluctant to give their data to public agencies. They're required, for example, to give it to the California Public Utility Commission, but not required to give it to anybody else. And sometimes that data could be very valuable. And that's a whole different discussion on just because the data is there doesn't mean you're going to get it. You know, there's a whole question of who owns the data.
Yeah, well,
so
yes.
policy
the book in itself. Yeah.
is very crucial, but it also needs to be fresh and current. It's almost as if we need and this maybe is asking too much. We need to be able to develop policies faster. But of course, policies require public consultation, require you to think carefully about it, and require you to take all sorts of measures to make sure your policy is right. But maybe we need a sandbox for policy where you can test things out very quickly and, you know, do the fast fail thing that we can do in software.
Do you think then that the last year has actually might have played into our hands then? Because I've been talking to a lot of cities and authorities across the last year, and they've expedited ideas much quicker from idea to realization, which typically would take 3 years or 5 years or 7 in some cases, where some cities have been having competitions with their staff, saying if you've got a great idea to save lives, time, money or fuel during the pandemic, come up with the idea and we'll push it through in 6 months. And things have happened, and temporary measures have been put in that are now going to be permanent, that kind of thing. Do you think the way that the authorities and smart authorities are thinking now might have changed permanently because of what's happened in this last year?
Well, look at vaccine development. I mean, they've been able to accelerate the development despite the very rigid rules and regulations and safety compliance things that they have. But I think the COVID thing, and I got to tell you, I think I'm suffering from COVID fatigue because I'm kind of fed up hearing about, you know, we've written a paper on the effects of COVID on transportation, the effects of COVID on, you know, workforce development. That's great. But I think the real thing we should be focusing on is what have we learned from COVID in terms of our need to be resilient and agile?
Yeah.
It's not just about the virus. The virus is a case in point, but what about the ability to react and respond? To
Mm.
me, uh, policy and overall operations and smart mobility must be adaptive, because one of the keys is to make sure that we understand changes in demand, we understand changes in operating conditions, and we're able to work with it and respond appropriately.
Yeah.
And to me, policy kind of fits into that same category. If there's a need for policy to come faster, how do we change our way of doing it to make it faster, to make it more agile?
Yeah. So in terms of if you are watching this and you are working for a city and you are a smart city advisor, that's going to be something that's playing on your mind. That's going to be something you're going to be looking at over the next couple of years as we come out of, I'm not going to mention it again, go back to something like normality. So is the book or the video or the audio content going to help people do that rather than having to spend thousands and thousands of pounds on consultants? Are they going to be able to purchase this body of knowledge and find some of the answers, but also be led towards the solutions?
Wait a minute, I'm a consultant. Yeah.
I know. That's why I put the apology in straight away. But other consultants.
Yeah, you're getting your own back from me calling you a comedian a couple of.
That's well, yeah, X, but yeah, thank you.
I think it's just important that we adapt as best we can and as quickly as we can.
Yeah,
we've got to be diligent at the same time. You got to make sure you do things right. The body of knowledge, where will it help? We'll gather together examples of policies across different cities, but also maybe in different areas that can be adapted to smart mobility. Sometimes we can do the Lego brick routine. We can pick pieces off the shelf that are partially formed and then stick them together. We can take a whole policy for aviation, say, and apply it to public transportation. There may be ways in which we can do that. And a lot of that relies on information sharing. And what we're seeing, and one of the things that drove us to work on the body of knowledge, is that people don't naturally share information. They don't naturally share everything. They'll filter it out and tell you the good stuff, the shop window, but won't really tell you about under the hood. So we'd like to get more about under the hood, what really went on, what's good, what's not so good, and what are the lessons learned. And some of the lessons are not at all obvious. Like, for example, if you've got a very sophisticated smart mobility system you want to put in place, maybe you should check if the suppliers and vendors are capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Just simple things like that. A lot of common sense, a lot of evergreen best practices, which will be in the book, and then the topical stuff will be in our surrounding material, the professional development, the virtual roundtables, the podcasts, the videos like we're doing now.
Excellent. Bob, thank you for joining me as ever. Hopefully, viewers, you've got something useful out of that. Join us in part 15, where we're going to be talking about operations management. Thank you.